Do I think pen tests a malpractice? No, but pen tests alone, if you're solely relying on pen tests to be a defense mechanism for the dynamic threat landscape, then yes. So I think we've evolved in the last decade, and I think we're trying to shift left. And doing testing point in time will tell you what issues you have at that point in time. We are seeing a much faster turnaround in the ability of people to fix vulnerabilities. And I think that is really, and real-time reporting. So back in the day, being in security, we have so much logging, we have so many tools, and it was so hard to get the trends and very meaningful metrics that can help executives make good business decisions. So the pen test and the bug bounty and the simulation, red team, purple team, I think they all serve different purposes.
I sort of look at this as bookends, right? So if you're just doing pen tests, you're probably sort of missing the boat on a lot of things, especially in this day and age with constant change and very rapid change, to where you're solely relying on simulation-based. An interesting concept that always comes to mind for me is, and maybe a fundamental question, if you are going to start relying on some of this automated testing, as I was driving into the venue today, when have you started trusting your GPS?
I said, so something happens in your environment and your AI agent, whatever you're doing, decides to shut down the power for the entire stretch that you have in January. So that's probably not a really good ethical decision, right? Hi, everybody. Good morning. Yes, we're still in morning. Thanks for coming and joining us at our very exciting panel discussion about the simulation economy and why annual pen tests may now be considered malpractice. We've got a great group of speakers here today. We're going to do a quick round of just brief intros for ourselves here. So my name's Kimberly Osmond. I'm a security advisor with Splunk/Cisco. Think of me as a field CISO. That's the easiest way I can explain my role because nobody knows what a security advisor is sometimes. Prior to joining Splunk and Cisco, I was at the Communication Security Establishment up in Ottawa. It's where I'm based now, and the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, which is part of CSE. So I got to do lots of cool stuff there. I started as a network architect, installing networks for the government and the military. I slipped into the foreign intelligence side, was there for about 16 years doing foreign intelligence operations and things like that. And I was on the cyber defense side as well. So I've been a cyber defense analyst, I was a pen tester, did all kinds of cool stuff. So that's my Coles Notes version. I'll turn it over to my other panelists.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Sumon Acharjee. I'm the Chief Information Officer for the City of Markham. City of Markham is just north of Toronto here, a fast-growing city, mid-size. I've been in public sector for over 15 years now through healthcare, higher education, and part of that over 25 years in private sector as well.
Hi everyone, my name is Monika Tamber. I'm currently a AVP of Application Security and Operational Governance at Manulife. I have over 23 years of experience. I started out as a computer engineer. And then doing all sorts of development. I've worked in so many different sectors, telecom, financial, government, and then I pivoted to security. And even in security, I think I've worked in almost every single type of role, risk, governance, compliance. I'm an AppSec now. I've been an application security architect, and I went back to the Schulich School of Business and got a master's in risk management and business performance. So yeah, right now my team, I have 4 teams, and we're really focusing on the on our developer experience and automating our CI/CD pipeline. And my team deals with all types of testing, the things that we're going to talk about today. So and the emergence of AI. So it's a really exciting conversation that I think about day to day.
Mm-hmm. Hello, everyone. I'm Mark Charest. I'm a managing principal consultant at Unit 42 for Palo Alto Networks. Prior to being at Palo Alto Networks, I worked for many years at NCC and coal-fired federal, working for different government agencies and things of that nature in the United States. Currently managing a team of pen testers. We are not for internal. We do all sorts of consulting for external entities. So yeah, you name it, I've pen tested it. ATMs, cruise ships, all sorts of things. So that's my background.
That's very cool. Thank you all for joining us. So as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about annual pen tests and the simulation economy and things like that. And looking at, has that shift to a simulation-based defense model made traditional pen tests, I guess, effectively obsolete at this point? So the first question I'm going to ask, and I'm going to start with Mark, because you're the farthest away from me, and we'll work our way back.
Right.
Do you think, or do you feel that this is an accurate statement in today's cybersecurity environment with what we're dealing with?
Can you repeat the question again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. So as we're, the whole concept of this talk is looking at the simulation environment and the pen testing that we're doing and things like that. And as we're moving to a simulation-based defense, do you think that this is still accurate in today's cybersecurity world and environment that we're operating in?
I think that many different companies are moving towards that. I think there is an overabundance of reliance on that. I think that we need to do a mix of everything dealing with that. I also think funding plays a big part in this, as we kind of discussed a little bit earlier. Smaller companies can't really afford this sort of simulation sort of thing, dealing with trying to simulate what a APT is doing and whatnot. It's just scenario goal-based versus wide breadth, and that costs more money and time and effort. So
cool. All right, I'm going to move over to Monika. Same question, and I'm curious how you feel like the title of this talk or this panel, the word malpractice in it, because we were talking a bit earlier, and it's a bit provocative, shall we say? So I'm curious, same question that Mark had, do you think that this is a valid type of environment that we're working in, and how do you feel about the word that malpractice is in that title, right? Yeah. Are we moving towards that?
Do I think pen test the malpractice? No, but pen test alone, if you're solely relying on pen test to be a defense mechanism for the dynamic threat landscape, then yes. So I think we've evolved in the last decade, and I think we're trying to shift left. Doing testing point in time will tell you what issues you have at that point in time. But everything is evolving so rapidly. So I think it's really important that we have defense in depth, and especially where my team focuses is to shift things left. So the developer, right from even concept, we have threat modeling, we have security architecture. When you get to coding, you have your SAST, you have your secret scanning, you have your SCA, you have your DAST, you have your container, I could go on, right? You have your pen test, you have your IS. So there's so many more tools, and these are testing in real time continuously. We have hard gating. So I think the objective is to make sure that code that we're releasing has less vulnerabilities. We're gonna find less things in our pen test. Pen test, I still think, serves a purpose, because these things are all looking at different layers of the ISO. It could be you're scanning a line of code. So the pen test and the bug bounty and the simulation, red team, purple team, I think they all serve different purposes. And I think the way I think about it in a very circular way, very holistic, is so we have pen tests. You want to look at the trends. If something keeps showing up in pen tests, and we do this with our team, why is that happening? One, you want to contain that, but going back to the architects and developers, why did we not catch this? Because once something is in pen test, you are in deployment, the systems are live. It is so much more expensive to fix it. You got to bring the system down. You got to wait until the next release, right? So a lot of times you can't even do that, and you're putting compensating controls. So there's a huge cost to that. So I think we have to look at it holistically. You still have the pen test. Is it a malpractice? No, but we're moving, instead of a point in time, to a more simulated and defense in depth, right? Strategy. So you have things happening throughout the life cycle of your application, of your projects, of your code.
Yeah, that's interesting concept as well, right? As we're moving forward. And I think that's going to lead in nicely to the question I'm going to ask you, Sumon, is again, I'd like your insights and what your thoughts on this topic as well, and what you're seeing in your environment, but maybe also what you're seeing and how we're evolving this practice from pen testing into, using AI and moving forward, or what are the implications from that as well?
When I first received the title of this talk, I was like, is this fake news or something like that? And,
I think we all had that same thought. Yeah.
But in sort of reflecting on it, I think this is an interesting chance to really start reflecting on cybersecurity, and you probably hear it through a lot of the talks today. We've always operated up until recently to be more compliance-based, right? And so, what's the driver for the pen test? It's best practice. Perhaps your insurers are looking for it, your board's looking for it. There's probably a foundational reason why you'd want to do it. And so, I think it's important, pen tests are foundational. But, we are starting to sort of evolve this into more risk-based view of security. And so is the pen test a one and done type of construct, something that can suffice in this risk-based view? And so perhaps simulation based capabilities is something that can perhaps get better continuity of assuring that you have those controls. And so I sort of look at this as bookends, right? So, if you're just doing pen tests, you're probably sort of missing the boat on a lot of things, especially in this day and age with constant change and very rapid change, to where you're solely relying on simulation based. An interesting concept that always comes to mind for me is, and maybe a fundamental question, like if you are going to start relying on some of this automated testing, it's like, as I was driving in to the venue today, it's like, when have you started trusting your GPS, right? Was it because of an incident? Was it because there was heavy traffic, which there were plenty of today? But
it's Toronto.
Yeah. Waze wasn't helping too much today, but it was just a drive. But it's that sort of concept of, okay, you can sort of rely and sort of trust it, but you probably in the back of your mind aren't totally trusting that either. And so I think this is another tool in our toolbox. And you probably have that favorite tool. Maybe it's your favorite method, perhaps pen test. But it's time to sort of change it up and maybe use some better tools and capacities to protect your environment.
I think we were just chatting a bit earlier how quickly this world that we live in cybersecurity evolves, right? It's, I would say every day, but probably every hour at this point, there's something new, and we're trying to keep up. And Mark, I'm curious, building on this as well, like you've been doing pen testing for quite a while, right?
Yes,
As we all have. I'm just curious how you've seen it evolving and where you see things going in the future, if you have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, the big push right now, as everyone knows, is AI, right? And so a lot of people like to believe that you're going to have agents and they're going to do everything, and there's not going to be this concept of human in the loop. We're not quite there yet, right? Human in the loop, can you imagine, like we were saying earlier, trusting the GPS to get you there, right? Well, now you're trusting an autonomous thing to go into your environment, possibly exploit things, possibly change configurations to show impact within the environment. I think we're a long ways off from not having the human in the loop for that. I think that it is going to be a marriage of individuals like myself and AI, basically working hand in hand in things to become more efficient. I think that's really the key, right, is efficiency. Can we use products like Claude Code to write malware now? Sure. But is it going to be a novel technique? Is it going to be something that is an undocumented API within Windows? No, because it doesn't know about it. It's undocumented. But individuals like myself have that sort of knowledge. So again, it's one of those things where it only knows what it knows. And that's what we taught it. So it'll be interesting to see in the future how it continues to learn and how we continue to adapt on that front. Again, with the advent of vibe coding and everything dealing with that, like agents are going to have a field day with that because they're writing the code and the code isn't secure by default. And we're having people that are not security individuals writing code and not understanding the implications. So agents will be gold for that, right? And it'll be kind of a waste of resources on the human front to go look at those sorts of things, right? So.
Yeah, it's interesting you said the human in the loop, right? I'm an old school pen tester. I'm going to date myself going back, early 2000s. AI wasn't a thing then.
Right.
So it was very much hands on keyboard, doing pen testing, things like that. And I do truly believe the humans were going to be in the loop for a long time. I'm a big believer in gut instinct. That's what we had to rely on when I was doing intelligence. And I still believe in that. And so, Monika, I'm just curious, like, what are you seeing? Like, how is AI influencing your world and your pen testing and how you're securing your applications in your environment? Are you seeing a big shift to that as well?
We work very closely with Microsoft, and they were telling us that they're starting to do red teaming with AI agents, and they're trying to put it in their CI/CD pipelines, which is a really cool idea. We're not there yet, so we still use offshore resources, real people doing pen testing, and I'm sure they use AI for the execution, making the reporting easier. I think it really augments the human capability. Where I am very excited, and I think a lot more AI usage I've seen an uptake in, at least for us at Manulife, is the remediation of vulnerabilities detected by, it doesn't matter where in the cycle, but even pen tests. We have tried to enable our developers to have a co-pilot to do auto fixing. And again, it's a co-pilot, we tell them. They're not going to fly the plane. We're not getting rid of the developer. They're to help you. So we are seeing a much faster turnaround in the ability of people to fix vulnerabilities. And I think that is really, and real-time reporting. So back in the day, being in security, we have so much logging, we have so many tools, and it was so hard to get the trends and very meaningful metrics that can help executives make good business decisions. And I think that's where AI is really, adding value is, parsing that large amounts of data, helping make suggestions with the remediation. But I would agree 100% with Mark. I think humans still needs to be in the loop. So we have a recommendation. Here's your auto fix. In GitHub launched a auto fix feature for vulnerabilities. We still want the developer to check it and do the QA. We don't want the AI to push stuff into production, right? Yeah. So I think we have to be mindful of how we're using AI in our organization. And it scares me too, the negative side, because we are seeing deepfake as a service. We're seeing AI generated malware, and humans won't be able to defend against that. So yeah, I think it's a double-edged sword, but I'm finding that there are certain areas where I think we could use it ethically. And then I think we still have to put a lot of guardrails and governance in place for the human not to be in the loop. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a little scary if we remove the human from the loop, I think.
Yes.
There was a story I was working with an energy sector customer, and they wanted to deploy AI without really thinking about it and how they wanted to use it. And one of the questions I asked them, I said, okay, so that's great. We're in Canada. It gets really cold, right? I live in Ottawa. It's minus 30. I said, okay, so something happens in your environment and your AI agent, whatever you're doing, decides to shut down the power for the entire stretch that you have in January. So that's probably not a really good ethical decision, right? So it's those kind of conversations where I feel like people don't really think through the impact of deploying artificial intelligence to do pen testing, to do defense, whatever it is. They wanted to use it for defense, and its first instinct, I use that word kind of loosely, was to shut down the power grid. Like,
it's very risky.
minus 30 in January. Please don't shut down my power if you don't have to. So kind of building on that a little bit, Sumon, like, what are you seeing in your environment? I think it might be interesting to hear if you're using artificial intelligence. Are you using it for pen testing, for defense, for identifying, the vulnerabilities and, the prioritized systems that you need to fix? Are you kind of going in that way? I see it sometimes with a lot of our customers that that's kind of where they're going, like Monika and Mark said, but I'm curious your insights as well.
Yeah, well, it's really exciting to sort of see our tools in that toolbox, as I was mentioning before, to sort of see all the developments and the new releases coming out with new capabilities and starting getting our teams to quickly adopt and leverage it. My feeling on this is it is a support tool. It is an enabling tool. The other aspect that we don't really talk about is it's probably a speed tool as well, right? So, if a human has to go through so many lines of code or so many logs to review an incident, if you have an agent or an AI capability that's enabled within your tool set, then, that may help find that needle in the haystack or something like that, right? And so, I think that is where the some of the efficiency sort of comes. Is it red team or blue team in terms of ongoing capability? But you do need the purple team to sort of facilitate and figure out what's happening. And so I think it's an interesting mechanism to test your boundaries. Like how is your responsive? Maybe that poor code that that's very simplistic coming out of the AI tool. If you run that through your protections, if it's not detecting it, there's probably a problem. But B, if it does detect it, what do you do with it? Is it noise? Is it something you want to continue to look? And so it's that critical thinking, I think, is really important. And that actually probably makes our teams better if they focus on that versus how to navigate the tool or figure out how to find a certain element.
Yeah, when it's funny you mentioned that. I think we mentioned it a bit earlier as well. For me, I see it as a force multiplier, right? Like it's augmenting what we already have, right? You're making humans more efficient at the jobs that they need to do. So next question, and I'll start with Mark again, given your background and things like that. So we've got all these different types of defense models, whether they're AI powered, whatever. I'm interested in how you see that fitting into the existing cybersecurity frameworks and compliance requirements that every industry has now. I feel like every other day I'm trying to understand a new compliance requirement for different industries, but how can we leverage this type of thing and how do we fit that into the frameworks that we're working with?
Right. So the good thing that AI is able to do is read documentation and remember everything, right? So using that as a tool, especially with the advent of ChatGPT and all of these sort of plain language things that we can just talk to it and get information, that helps a lot with that understanding. When we're doing red teams and purple teams, a lot of times those are mapped to different frameworks. For instance, we'll go in on a red team and the goal might be, we might not be trying to get domain admin, but you want us to get into, let's say, a database, right? And you want this APT used, these TTPs, these trade crafts, in order to do this for someone else in your siloed thing. Maybe it's finance or whatnot, right? So then you can directly map the techniques that you're using in the red team to NIST framework and to these APTs to effectively emulate them, right? Where the purple team comes in is, well, did you see that? Can we help you then from there understand what we were doing, what you missed, what logs, what alerts, things of that nature, and how can we enhance you on that front, right? So again, kind of getting back to AI, you can take a report, have it read that out and map it right back to the opposite frameworks as well, right? It's really good at when you give it data and you are doing it within a certain number of tokens or words, right? It's good at understanding things, not hallucinating. As you give it more and more information, that's when more and more hallucinations occur. So doing it a per project basis is the way I see that sort of thing going. you create a gem in Gemini, or something along those lines, of skill and other sorts of things, right? That starts at a specific point, and then you can continue to use that for these sorts of operations, right? So I think that's where it's the efficiency, the time front, building out these little micro things that we can keep reusing within the AI realm in support of documentation helps a lot. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. I'm going to shift it a little bit as we move over to Monika, because I think you have a lot of experience in this and doing it. How would you go about measuring the effectiveness of these type of defenses? Maybe that's something, AI can be leveraged for as well, right? To identify things. But curious, do you have any ideas around measuring the impact and the effectiveness of these types of defenses for your organization?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think if you just look at one tool at a time, it won't tell the story so fast. And I think my time that I've been at Manulife the last 2 years, even our metrics, the things that we're measuring is how long is it taking us to detect vulnerabilities, but more importantly, how long is it taking teams to remediate them? Is that getting faster, and is that within compliance? So for a critical, if it's 10 days, are they able to? And I think that's where it becomes much more risk-based. So anything that helps, I think about a really good metric being, has it really effectively lowered the risk for the organization? I don't want it to be just a number on a spreadsheet, and it has to tell a story. And I think that's where AI is really helpful in trends. And for example, if you are seeing in your bug bounty, red team, purple team, that you've seen an uptake in a certain type of attack, be it a CIAM or whatever, then you need to go back and connect that dot in your end-to-end life cycle and say, hey, to the security architects, what do we need to be doing better? Because if we just close our eyes and keep doing what we're doing and shipping code there's something that is missing, right? So I think that holistic view was very hard to actually have without some of the technological advancements we've seen in data analytics and AI. So so mean time to detect, mean time to recover. Also, another thing I've noticed is when you have a lot of tools, you have to make sure they're configured properly. So they will create a lot of noise as well. So, and supporting large organizations, you have to have good processes. If teams are detecting a lot of false positives, we need to tweak those tools on a continual basis. How are we enabling the developer to quickly dismiss a false positive? So I think having those automated flows, right? And I would say there's a distinction between automation and AI. You don't always need AI. Sometimes you just need good automated process, which is effective. So I would not say throw AI onto every problem. Really think about it. Does AI make sense? But I think meaningful metrics, and I think every organization needs to think about what that means to them. Because I worked in different segments, and in telecom, for Rogers, availability is the top thing. That's what brings in money for them. And then when I worked in the government, Payments Canada, we're doing clearing and settlement. Confidentiality, availability is also a big thing. But so you have to try to figure out what is my bread and butter and what is a meaningful metric to me where I'm reducing the biggest risk to this, which part of the CIA is more important. So it's like, we have best practices, but it's the analytical thinking that you as a information security professional has to think about, that what do I care about the most, right? And only then do the frameworks work. You don't want to just apply with broad strokes the same thing everywhere in every single organization.
And so I'm going to ask you the same question because it's a very different industry, right? So we've got Manulife, government, and telecoms, and you're a city of Markham. So I know it's still government, it's municipal, but interested in your perspective on that in terms of what do you measure for effectiveness, or what are the implications for that for you?
I'm going to take a little slight deviation from your question on that, because it sort of take it up to a little bit of a higher level. And we were actually just before this panel conversing about this. Imagine if your organization was greenfield, meaning you had an ability to start over and just use the tools that you have today that's available. And how much more efficient would that be than you have of all the processes? Now, cybersecurity has been around for a number of years. You probably have a lot of tools. Do we need to rationalize those tools, optimize those tools? And so, with all this so fast enablement with all this new capability that we have with these tools, perhaps it's time to take stock of what we have, and also take a good inventory of what you have, because with all these tools, all these capabilities, it comes back down to, is this a compliance thing or is this a risk thing? And so where are your risks? What's your important systems? Is it time to sort of reevaluate that and maybe shine a new light towards that? If you only done that maybe a few years ago, and that's your crown jewels or that's your key system that you have right now, perhaps it's really time now to start taking stock. What's that purpose? What's the purpose of that code? What's the purpose of that system? Do we really need the system? Is there new capabilities that have sort of assimilated with enhancements and stuff like that? So as security professionals and IT professionals, it's really good to have a good inventory and an understanding of what you have, and then with that, then making some of that analytical and metric driven, data driven decisions on what's there.
Well, we're talking about that, Kimberly, about OSFI and the critical processes versus critical applications. There's been a shift, because when you do a DR, BCP type, you have a situation, you have a crisis. Yes, your pen test and all these things will tell you something, but we may not have mapped out what was really critical, that process, right? And you don't have the necessary things. And that's also an important aspect of security that we have to think about.
Yeah, and I think you both kind of hit the nail on the head, right? I think we're moving away from like that, the systems, right? Obviously we're still going to have them, that thing, but it's the processes, right? And how everything is interconnected, and what is the criticality of all those connections, right? If something goes down, what does it talk to? And we were talking earlier, there's so many things, right? I don't think I've ever worked with a customer or a partner where they knew every single thing that was going on in their environment. I don't care how good you are. It's just completely overwhelming. So curious to all three of you, we'll start, I think, with Monika this time. How do you see things like this, this type of environment for pen testing and simulations, and taking advantage of AI to understand those processes that are happening? Is that something you're doing in your environment now? Can you shed some light on that? I think that might be interesting for the audience as well.
I think inventory is a really hard problem to solve. It doesn't matter what layer you are, right? Be it code or be it processes, be it applications. I know we're going through some of this exercises because there's a requirement from our regulator. We have tried, I can speak more at the code level. We've tried to make it easier, like for our repos, we've tried to create metadata files. You can get AI to help, but making it mandatory that each of your code bases, we need data, like which application is this updating? And it's always a many to many, right? And it takes a long time to get that foundation built, so you can get to a point where you have really good metrics and real-time reporting. But I think that is the foundation. And there's always drift. So it's not a one-time thing. You do the inventory, but then you have to continuously be, revisiting it. We do have the attestations on an annual basis, but still, when you look at our systems, CMDB and other systems, there's constant drift. So it is a lot of work and effort. And I don't think personally right now we're using AI, but that could be a good use case. I think a lot of it is manual. I could see use cases for us to do that better.
Very cool. I'm going to ask a question that we haven't discussed already, but I think you're all more than very knowledgeable to answer it. So CMDBs, bane of my existence because they're never up to date, ever. And most times I get a spreadsheet. from people. So I'm curious, yes, we can leverage AI and things like that, but do you think we're moving towards CMDBs just being completely obsolete at this point? Are we coming to the point where we may have a different way to do this, given the new, availability of technology and
I know APIs, you could do like auto detection and stuff,
Yep.
and it's not 100% great because it depends what's going through your API gateways, and then you could have APIs internally. So I would be interested to hear what the other panelists think, but I'm not sure if AI is really being used, but maybe those detection capabilities in the network, could definitely help.
Sumon, thoughts?
That's an interesting one.
I've been asked this question myself, so that's why I'm throwing it out there.
Where I'm seeing in our adoption of some of the AI capabilities, and I'll get to the CMDB, I'm seeing really great value in helping categorize or classify. Like we're using, say, some AI tools to identify our sensitive information, our confidential information. That's really a great capability. And so if you can sort of marry the categorization with the actual components of a CMDB, that's an interesting element. Maybe, as an audit function to say, okay, we're detecting changes here, but it's not there. That may be an example of a categorization. And so I think that's one element, meta tagging and all that sort of stuff is elements, API thing. Where I think the challenge is, and what really the CMDB sort of helps capture, is perhaps some context. And if there's a way to sort of get that context, I think there's probably a greater chance for that. But this is a foundation fundamental, and you need to maintain that control.
Yeah, you're right.
And so it's maybe bolstered, but not replaced.
All right, I just got our 5-minute warning, so I'm going to go back to Mark.
Okay.
Just some thoughts around maybe where we're going with this type of simulation defense using AI. Looking forward, do you have any thoughts around where we might be going, how this might play out in the next couple of years? Granted, things will change daily, but just kind of with your perspective from Unit 42 and the types of things that you're doing in pen testing, do you see a vision of where this might be going in the future?
Yeah, so we're definitely building out agentic capabilities, again, with the human in the loop and everything like that. But the whole idea where this will really become powerful for the pen testing side, the red teaming side, even the purple teaming side, is building out tools, for instance, that you're on an engagement and you talk to a language model saying, hey, I'm going to be phishing this individual. It automatically knows, okay, next step OSINT. Let me go ahead and grab information on that. Right now, the research says you're going to have good with this file extension, and then it's built into a CI/CD pipeline, and it builds out the malware for you, and then it can even then spin it up into a web server and things of that nature. So yeah, I really do think that there is a place in offensive security for AI and for building this out, and for, making this more efficient, even bringing down the costs, right? That's one thing that we brought up if we're going to talk about it being malpractice, not running red teams and using normal pen tests. Well, then the only way that we could make it not malpractice is to make it more available for more people. And I really do think AI in the future, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, will give that capability to smaller companies simply because of the efficiency gains, right?
I just want to jump in
Yeah,
on that.
please.
That's for the good. The bad guys are probably paying attention to all that as well. And if you're not paying attention to those capacities and capabilities, then that's malpractice.
Good point.
Yeah.
You're quite right.
Sure.
And as we start to conclude this up, you actually led into my next question,
There
which
you
is
go.
fantastic. Thank you. And I'll turn it back to Monika and then Sumon as well quickly. Because we're talking about, larger organizations can afford to do these very sophisticated pen tests, right? Not every organization has the same budget. So do you see any cost implications from moving from traditional pen testing into kind of this simulation-based models? Are you seeing that now, or can you kind of see that moving forward, that maybe there's going to be a bit of a break for some of these organizations in terms of cost as we go forward?
I think doing an annual pen test used to be really expensive, like 5 to 8 years ago, and it's gotten much cheaper. But the more tools that you have, and where we're trying to get to a simulation base, I think you have a more upfront cost because you have more tools. You have to train people. And let's not kid ourselves, trying to make any big change in the organization, be it inventory, secure a CI/CD pipeline, there's friction. So you have to train your people, you got to train all the developers, and they finally get on board, and then everything's changing so much. But I think where the benefit is, the cost of a breach is so expensive, and it's not just monetary, it's
It's your
reputation and all this, right? So I think catching things earlier, shifting left, I think the overall there is a cost benefit. If you have to pitch that to your board to get the funding. So you always have to tell that business story. But yes, I think upfront there would be more of a cost to establish those overall gains if you were to do the tally and say, okay, with the level of protection, quicker detection and faster response, I think you are overall saving costs.
some money. Yeah. So I'm curious, your perspective being with the municipality. I know budgets are tight when it comes to public sector. Some of your thoughts around that as well, how you see that going.
Yeah, Markham has one of the cheapest property tax rates in around the Greater Toronto area, and that means we don't have a lot of budget to sort of keep the lights running, and that is something that worries me a little bit. Like, I'm already seeing it with some of my renewals, hey, we've introduced this AI capability. Oh, it's a 30, 50, 80% increase in renewal costs. And so, how do you get ahead of that? Because, you have to properly budget it and plan it. The stuff is happening so fast. That is, a concern. I can't maintain huge contingency budgets on public dime. And so, that is a worry that I would have, to be honest. But it comes back to my comment on it's also prudent to sort of rationalize,
right.
And so it's if you are in this profession and you need to have the best tools to do the job, then it's well worth the investment. Right. You don't go to a dollar store if you're a carpenter or something like that. Well, maybe you might sometimes, but you're going to go and get the best tool for the job, right?
No, that's fair. I just got our 1 minute warning, so we're going to wrap up. So I wanted to thank the three panelists here for their insights and for spending the last hour with us. I would open it up to questions, but I think we're okay. So if anyone has any questions, happy to take some now. If not, we'll be around, I think, for most of the day in this event. So you're welcome to track us down if you want to have some further conversations. But if there's no questions, we'll wrap up. Thank you, everybody.